Welcome to eSports Hero Café, where we talk about any and all esports. I'm your host, Bowman Shota, and today we have a very special guest with Alex Jacoby, who's the owner of New Order Esports. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the economics in the esports world and kind of the behind the scenes. So, Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. Been kind of an interesting week with a lot of different topics, but you're the owner of New Order Esports. Tell me a little bit about your story and how you got into that.
Sure. So I guess a few years ago, I was into esports only as a fan, right? I've been into gaming my whole life, played a multitude of games, and I guess really about 5 or 6 years ago, my main game was League of Legends. I was never like a professional level player, but I was, I guess, good for a casual. I was, mid diamond or something, which was good enough to go to
Nice.
some lands and like local lands and school tournaments and make a little bit of money, some gift cards here and there. But after I graduated, I decided, I should really try something that I really love, and gaming was that thing. And that's how I got started at New Order. I decided that this was going to be something I was going to truly go for, and so I started my own team.
Nice, nice. So what is New Order Esports? Like, tell me a little bit about the company and what you guys do.
Sure. So I guess from a purely legal perspective, we're a limited liability company. We're an LLC. And from like the gaming perspective, right now we are solely a Hearthstone team. We have three Hearthstone players and one manager. But overall, we'd hope to be like a gaming organization in every major esport. And so that's kind of what we're building towards.
Nice, nice. Now, as you were looking to, to follow the passion into owning the esports team and getting into it, what was kind of your process as far as getting into it and the kind of steps you went through?
Sure. So first, I had to really convince myself that I was going to do this. This kind of a financial investment at the beginning,
Yeah.
and starting out in esports now is kind of guaranteeing yourself a loss for at least a little bit of time. You're going to run out of losses as a company. But I did some research. I reached out to some people that, both legally and I knew within the industry a little bit, and kind of sought some advice. And then I took next steps that were recommended to me. I started my own LLC. I talked to a lawyer and got some contracts drawn up. And then I, decided I was going to enter into Hearthstone, and I started looking at players that I thought were very talented but weren't on teams, and that's kind of where it's led me today with having three players signed.
Nice, nice. Now I know with like Newzoo and Super Data, throwing out numbers to where by the end of 2017 it may be a $1 or $2 billion industry in esports. Was that intimidating a little bit getting into, and like what were some of the challenges you faced, getting your company started, especially with that type of intimidating knowledge ahead of you?
Sure. So I guess looking up from the outside in, when I first started, the most intimidating thing was maybe not necessarily like how big it could be, but how big it is right now and how little I knew going into it. Right, I didn't know anybody within the scene that was truly, really well embedded in the scene, or someone that had, been on a team or was a part of a team. I knew people that were kind of on the outside. And so I was kind of an outsider looking in, and that was very intimidating because, how am I going to talk to people? How am I going to find any connections? How am I going to make anything happen? Um, and I think that just by, reaching out and getting started, the goal was to grow and become a name that people knew within one esport, and that esport was Hearthstone, and then kind of move out from there, and then maybe have some connections within one esport, and they can introduce me to other people. And that was kind of how I would break down that barrier of, I don't know anybody. And that was the biggest obstacle for me to overcome, and still is at this point.
Nice, yeah, definitely. I know my experience getting into esports. It was a lot more challenging now than it was back in the day. So,
Absolutely.
I don't know, a little bit of background about me. I used to play Unreal Tournament competitively, and our biggest sponsorship that we almost had was Coca-Cola, where they were going to offer us prize money to give out every season, which was exciting. But like in your endeavors, like reaching out to getting sponsorships and investment money, where are some of the success and failures you've had in that?
Sure. So I guess we're a much smaller team than probably the big names you think of when you think of esports, TSM, CLG. New Order is not really up there in terms of followers or its size, or social media reach and that kind of thing. And so in terms of getting sponsors or talking to advertisers and that kind of thing. We had to have some value that we brought to the table, right? No one's gonna sponsor a team that's very small and goes to very small tournaments or has people that stream to 20 or 30 people. That's not really appealing to advertisers, right? And so we started our own open tournaments, and we tried to have casters that were somewhat well known to draw in viewers. And through that, we would talk to sponsors and say, hey, you can get your name on this tournament, as well as our team and that kind of thing. It's kind of a way to bring in sponsors and advertisers like eSports Zero.
Nice. Now, obviously, as you were going through your process of getting New Order Esports started, what was a piece of bad advice and what was a piece of good advice that you got as you were starting your company?
Sure. So I guess bad advice is tough to say, because I think in esports, especially the state it's at, everybody is coming at it from a different background and a different angle, and so bad advice is hard to. I think everyone wants the best for everybody else in esports. It's kind of maybe that might not be true, but everybody that I talked to wanted the best for me when I entered esports, and they might have been coming at it from a different perspective than I was, and so I wouldn't say it was necessarily bad advice, but I would say it wasn't advice that maybe I should have followed so strictly. And I think one of those pieces of advice I followed, but maybe followed too strictly, because it didn't apply to me, was that I was overly conservative in how I approached the team. My goal starting out, as I think I mentioned earlier, is that I wanted to build a name in Hearthstone and then kind of expand out into different games. But I think that I was encouraged to stick with one game for a long time and see how I grew there. And I think that's something I should have done earlier, is look to expand into other games. Because I think other games, like the fighting game community, like Street Fighter V and Smash, are growing rapidly, and things like Call of Duty with the COD World League are growing rapidly. And I think, not saying I would have tier 1 teams in those sports or tier 1 players in fighting game community, but I think it would have been something to look into and get at least some foothold in as early as possible would have been better. But that said, the person that gave me that advice, like, it was good advice for them, and it probably worked out for them better than me. And so I don't think they were trying to say this is really I'm going to get at them, but it just wasn't the right thing for my situation.
Yeah. Okay.
But some good advice I got when I first started my team. I talked to the owner of Hearthlytics, who's a much more established team than mine, and he had some very good insights into how both Hearthstone and esports works. And that might have been obvious, but he really drove the point home in that one is it's really all about connections, especially in Hearthstone, where there's a large amount of invite-only tournaments. It's all about who you know, and if you can kind of goad your connections into maybe giving your player an invite into a tournament, or getting your guy to cast a tournament, that kind of thing really goes a long way. And two is that it's all about your social media. Teams live and die by their social media, and on Twitter, like, your follower count really means something, because that's what appeals to advertisers and sponsors and that kind of thing. And so trying to work out how to be effective on social media and impactful on social media and engage with people on social media is a very tough thing, but it's truly how teams live and die, and how teams kind of judge their own value to potential investors and sponsors and advertisers.
Nice. Now that brings up a question that I just thought of. Like, how many people are on your team? You said you had a team manager, but like, what else do you have on your staff?
So right now it's just me, as the owner, my manager, Tana and Grace, and 3 of the players. And so right now it's just us 5. And so right now we are a very small organization, but I think that, I know for a fact that we'll be looking to expand rapidly in the next few months here. So while that's true for now, just 5 people, I wouldn't say that's going to be typical of us in the near future.
Yeah, no, but it's exciting to watch people get into the scene, because it's a little bit like the Wild West right now with there's lots of opportunities in esports, from it, as you guys have, you now own a team, you have actual players, to even people like myself who are getting into more of the production side of things, and there's casters and journalists and all that stuff. So I guess, looking forward into the future, where do you think the bigger opportunities are in esports?
Sure. So I think more mainstream coverage is coming for esports. I think you're seeing things like the CS:GO E League, I think it's called. That's going to be on TNT. Like that's huge. That's mainstream media. And you're seeing a lot of major names invest in esports. Like you're seeing people like Shaq who invested in NRG, and you're seeing people like Rick Fox who invested in Echo Fox's own team. Um, and I think that's where it's really going to grow. Is that it's going to get a lot more mainstream coverage. It's on ESPN right now. It's on TNT, and a lot bigger players are going to be involved. And I think that's really like an indication of how hard we've come. Like you look at pictures of esports events 5 years ago, and you look at them now. It's crazy, and I think it's only going to get bigger and be produced on a much grander scale.
Yeah. Now, a side topic, which I kind of was just wanted to get your opinion on, is the whole betting side of because I was looking at some of the Newzoo numbers, and betting accounted for, a little over $50 million in revenue in 2015 for the esports scene, which was kind of a big deal, and plus with the whole regulations around it and stuff like that. So what's your opinion on, esports betting, and how do you think that would impact the scene as a whole?
Sure. So I think it's a difficult question. I think there's kind of two sides to it. As someone that's an avid Dota watcher and player, and someone that's very into watching CS:GO, betting is a very large part of that community. It's not even like for real money, but for skins, which essentially do have money, like they're in-game cosmetics. That I think gambling of those, one I think is on the bad side. I think people seem to abstract it from or having a real value, and that's where a problem comes in. Is that people will just gamble thousands and thousands of dollars of in-game items that they say these aren't worth anything, and then they lose thousands of dollars of value in their inventory, and that could have been spent on other things, and that's bad. Like that, these are gambling sites that are open to anybody that has a Steam account, which is children and people that really shouldn't be gambling. But on the other side of things, I know that CS:GO and Dota sometimes benefit from increased viewership numbers, just because that game is on a site like CS:GO Lounge or Dota 2 Lounge. So a very lower tier game that's in CS:GO, like an ESCA main game, might be on CS:GO Lounge for the promotions, and that game will get 5,000 viewers just because people are betting on it, and no one really knows the players, but that's like huge publicity for those players and those teams, and it's kind of taking the bad with the good in the sense that this can drive traffic to a game and can create viewership out of nowhere, but the downside is that there's a lot. It's not regulated really at all, especially those skin betting sites, and that can introduce really unintended and very negative consequences when people that shouldn't be gambling are and can't really accurately judge the value of what they're betting.
Yeah, I did try one of those daily fantasy sites. I didn't put any money in it towards it because there's some of those free offers. I did win 5 cents. I was very happy, but
there you go. It's free money.
But it was interesting because I did, as you said, I did pay more attention to those matches that the players were playing in, and it did bring me in more. Whether or not I agree with the whole gambling thing or not, but it was. I think you're right. It definitely does has an impact on the viewership. So. Now, your company, New Order Esports, you're looking to grow and expand, and this is the year to do it. Considering we have all the big things like your E League. We've had things on CW on TV for I believe it was Mortal Kombat they did special. So where do you see your company going this year? What are some of your goals and the opportunities you have coming up?
Sure. So I think first. As an organization, I want to be able to have a well-known name in every esport I'm in. So right now that means Hearthstone. And I think in Hearthstone there will be some tournaments coming up that might not be announced that we will hopefully be participating in. There's things like BlizzCon qualifiers and the seasonal preliminaries that our players will hopefully qualify for, and I have no doubts they will. And be a part of it, and hopefully get on a bigger stage to showcase themselves. And I think one of our players, Eversiction, just qualified for PAX Prime by going through 2 ONOG brackets, beating people like Firebat and Admirable and Nostum and like these VLPS and these really big names. And so
That's
I'm really
exciting.
I'm really looking forward to that because that's big for our team. But also, I want to expand into other games that I think are also growing fast. So I think things like Smash and things like Street Fighter are games like the fighting game community is insane and it's growing so fast. Um, and it's so fun to watch that I really want to be a part of that. And I think also games like Call of Duty and Halo are things that are um, they're kind of making their case for being spectator esports and that kind of thing that I never really gave them credit for a few years ago. And so I'd love to be a part of those esports as well. And I think this year we'll see some growth into those games for our organization.
Nice. I was thinking about an interview I saw with Dignitas's team owner, and how he was talking about, you know, back in like 2004, 2005, his total team revenue was like $500, and now they just signed their first six-figure deal, which is exciting for him. But he also talked about how even though there's lots of, you see the news with the people like Shaq and A-Rod and all that getting into it with money, he still has to turn down offers. Like he said, he couldn't get into Overwatch because it just wasn't the best move for his money at that time. Looking at that as you're going forward, how do I phrase this? I apologize.
No problem.
Looking at some of the games that are going to be coming out soon, like Paragon, like Overwatch, even Unreal Tournament has its crowd developed free to play game. Are those some of the games that you're going to try to get in on the ground floor?
Yeah, so I guess each one is a case by case basis, and I think for these new games, it's really too early to tell. I would say that being a small organization, maybe we have an advantage in that we can get in on the ground floor, right? We can take that risk and say, we'll be a premier name. We'll send the best team in a smaller game that's just come out, and hopefully, it gets really big and we'll be the next big team. And maybe that's not an advantage for us, but it's something that is exciting for us because we have just as much of an opportunity to sign a premier team as a big organization does, right?
Yeah.
When viewership is not existing because the game hasn't come out yet or something like that. But that said, it's really a evaluation of like kind of an EV equation. Like is the money we put into this going to be worth the outcome, right? And so that's something that I really can only judge on a case-by-case thing. But I would say that, new games and new things, they're exciting. And it's something that I obviously look at pretty closely and I talk with people about and kind of get their opinion on as well.
Nice. All right. Well, at this point, is there any, we kind of call this our shameless plug section, but sure. Is there any events your guys are going to be in, any tournaments you guys are hosting that you want to plug?
Absolutely. Yeah. So first, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our own opens. I mentioned them a little bit earlier, but we do host New Order Open. It's on Strivewire right now, and we'll be they're open tournaments with a $200 prize pool sponsored by Esports Hero. And you can get your game cast by on April 17th. It's the next streamed portion, which will be the top 8, and it's that Saturday and Sunday, 4/16 and 4/17. That'll be cast by Tandem Grace, our manager, and Firebat. So he'll be casting those games.
Oh, nice.
So if you want your games cast by Firebat, this is a great opportunity. Maybe win some money in the meantime.
Yeah.
Also, I would. What kind of owner would I be if I didn't plug our Twitter and our players? So as I'm, small team, we do live and die by our social media, so any support you can give us is greatly appreciated. So go follow us on Twitter at New Order Esports. Follow our players Crimzig at Crimzig, Eversiction at Eversiction, Astrogation HS, and Tandem Grace at the Tandem Grace, because there isn't more than one. So make sure you check those out and do follow us. It really does help out.
Nice. Well, Alex, thank you very much for being on the show. All of you watching, thank you very much for checking out this video. Be sure to tune in every week as we have more of these interviews lined up. And other than that, share, like, and favorite this as you see fit, and you all have a wonderful day.